Welcome to the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts. In this two-part series, Jack Schonely and I sit down with Andrew Nicoletti, a sergeant and pilot from the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. Get ready for an engaging conversation as we explore Andrew's unique journey into aviation, from his early experiences to his operational responsibilities in a busy county. Andrew discusses the intricacies of the Huntsman mission, particularly the challenges and nuances involved in dignitary details. The episode also highlights the critical importance of precautionary landings and the role of succession planning in law enforcement. Andrew shares how his experiences with the Civil Air Patrol and his education at the Citadel have shaped his career and outlook. As the conversation unfolds, themes of leadership, continuous training, and the challenges faced in aviation for law enforcement emerge. Andrew reflects on his military deployments and current aviation operations in Palm Beach County, emphasizing the necessity of mentorship, relationship building, and the meticulous planning involved in high-stakes scenarios. Whether you're interested in aviation, law enforcement, or leadership development, this episode's packed with valuable insights and lessons that are sure to resonate. Thank you to our sponsors, Spectralab, Metro Aviation, and Airbus.
Welcome to the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts. The Hangar Z podcast is the first and only podcast dedicated to promoting and exploring the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation. Join your host, John Gray, Jeff Ratkovich, and Jack Schonely.
Still southbound, skidding to a stop. Stand by here. Looks like you're getting ready to bail. Heads up, guys, bailing. Okay, the guy, he's running through the house, jumping the fence, through the shotgun, through something out. Grabbing the shotgun. Don't go over that fence. Don't go over that fence. Grab the shotgun again. He is armed. Stay there. Hold your position.
4 on the stop. You're in custody.
You're advising code 4 on the stop.
You had brought up some deployments that you're part of with the Florida Guard. When you look back on some of those experiences you had in deployments, were those challenging or interesting for some reason or another?
Both of them were very different. My first one was in 2011. I was a medevac team leader, which is like just a lieutenant. So I'm kind of in charge of like managing the pilots, but I'm a lieutenant with 0 military flight time. So I'm really just learning from everybody. It's a weird dynamic because you technically are like writing all the evaluations for all of the pilots that you are in charge of, but then they are actually commanding the aircraft.
Well, it's interesting because I think that's a common trait you find in law enforcement today, right?
Yeah.
A lot of supervisors have 0 experience, which is a challenge. We talk about that quite a bit. So interesting that you got to experience that and see now, having been on both sides, maybe the benefit of having that experience as a pilot to be able to, evaluate the folks that are underneath you.
Yeah, and it was, medevac teams are small, so it's like 3 aircraft. I think we had like 24 people total. When you live in those tight quarters and you do that for a year and you're running missions and, it's very high stakes. Everyone's very concerned about making sure that the people that we're covering have the best medevac coverage possible. The chain of command doesn't break down, but things bend and personalities come out, and you have to be able to understand that. Like you can't like rule with an iron fist. I've been through a bunch of different leadership styles, right? Like when I was a young lieutenant, I was told like, oh, you got to get out there and make sure your guys know. And it's like they were just setting you up for failure. And, you just can't do that. You can't be a jerk. You can't be, so snowflake. You got to be malleable and understand like people are going to react differently. And then you need to let people, because they're people at the end of the day, right? I think everyone knows that there's a mission to accomplish, but you can't affect the stressors, all the stressors that are happening in people's lives. You need to have a little leeway for and be gracious for those and understand like they want to do a good job. Everyone wants to do a good job, and they take the mission very seriously. When I was first started, I used to refer to everyone as like my guys. Like I'd be like, oh yeah, I want to get my guys to go do this, or I want to get my guys to go do that. My company commander at the time, who's actually he's in Gainesville. He works for Alachua County. He's also in the reserves. He's the SAO. His name's Brett Rodenizer. He kind of got mad at me when I was like, oh, can I cut my guys loose? And he was like, my guys? It's like, what do you mean my guys? And I was like, well, look, the guys I'm in charge of. And he's like, no, it's like, they're not your guys. They're the guys. They run. They're the part of the unit. You are replaceable. they're not yours. And I was like, okay. And then I took like a deep dive into that, and I was like, man, I see what he's saying. Like, yes, I'm responsible for the actions that happen for the unit, but they're not my guys. I don't. There's at no point do I have any possession of any of these people. And to say that, and it's a super common thing, and I don't think people mean it badly, but when somebody puts it like that, and you're like, wow, that was super insightful. Like, you just changed my whole outlook on how I look at leadership.
One word.
Yeah, that was
one word.
Just that one, and words mean things, right? So yeah, that was I would say like that on my first tour, when he kind of he popped my collar a little bit, popped my chain, but it was enough. And I mean, I've taken it with me for the last 15, 18 years, whatever it is. So yeah, and then learning from those warrant officers, man, I call them the big three. So Ray Freeman, who you obviously know.
Love that guy.
Yeah, he's probably one of my favorite human beings on the face of the earth. So is a guy named Daddy B. He took me under his wing. Huge. Brian Farrell is his name. He took me under his wing. Those two guys right there, they taught me how to fly in combat. And then another guy, Rich Nichols, he used to fly Cobras. He was flying like tow missiles, when copper wires were attached to them. Like, you're learning from those guys. Like, when they tell you to do something, you do it. But when you get back, you talk to them for 45 minutes about why you did something for 3 seconds, because it's such a valuable lesson. And, I still talk to all three of those guys, and there's still something I learn from them every time. Ray he's still in the game. I mean, the guy's everywhere. And so he's just a wealth of knowledge. I call him all the time. The other two guys run the simulator up in Savannah. So I try and get up there with the Air Force and hop in the Alpha Lima. And, if you haven't sat through Daddy B's hydraulics class, you're missing out. He'll show you some stuff. And it's just a different way of doing malfunction analysis. And that's like the biggest thing you can do, right? Is just learn from as many people as you can. Always be a student. Learning from those guys was really the key to a successful career so far. So we'll see how it turns out. But
that role of mentorship in career development and personal development is huge. I think you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't find someone who's smarter within you, that's got more experience than you, and trying to learn from those folks. I think any wise man will try and learn from those that are smarter than him. So I really love mentorship. And what's funny is, really kind of in the last couple of years, have been introduced this idea of reverse mentorship, where you kind of latch on to some of the younger folks, and you're mentoring them, but also in a way they're mentoring you, right? Because they're so keyed on to new technologies and so quick to adapt a lot of that stuff, that I end up picking their brain and learning from them. So, to learn not just from the folks that are senior to you, but junior is important as well.
100%. So it's funny you say that. So I just went back to do my multi-engine commercial, which I am a slow roll when it comes to like doing progressive schools. So anyway, so I went back, and my instructor was 24, and she just started flying a couple years ago. And like when I was coming up in aviation, I was flying when I was 14, and then I got my license when I just turned 17. And all my instructors were like in their late 20s, and it used to be like something that the older guys did because they could pass along this experience. And now they're kids just time building. But she was so good. She was so good at her job. She was terrific with the aircraft. She knew every system inside and out. And it was an accelerated program it took like 7 days total. But the guy who gave me my check, my pre-check, was 20. And he had the most hours out of all of them. And what a wealth of knowledge. And I was like, he's talking, and I'm like, I don't understand what you're saying. Like, I've never even heard this term. Like, what? How did you come up with this? And he's like, what? This is the standard. I was like, how is this the standard? I don't know anything about this. So he's, it got to the point where, I've got like 3,000 hours more than this guy, probably 3,500 more hours than this guy. And I'm like, oh man, I feel sheepish. This is a little ridiculous. And he's teaching me stuff, and she's teaching me stuff. I'm like, this is wild. There were 2 kids there whose parents had to drive them. I'm not kidding. It was like, what is happening? And that's the level of the youth that's coming up. So like you see like on TikTok and stuff, like, oh, we're not worried about our kids and stuff. It's like, I feel pretty good about it because these kids were working hard. They were studying. I haven't studied that hard. I can't even tell you the last time I studied that hard. Probably not even for my CFI or CFII. Like I studied hard for that. This accelerated course was tough, but it was eye-opening to see all these young kids. And like I'm going to them and I was like, so talk to me about this weight and balance one more time. I just want to make sure I'm on point here. Because like, when was the last time you did a paper weight and balance? Like,
oh, jeez.
I haven't done a paper weight and balance in years. That's why I have a computer program for that. And it's much more complex.
Where have we heard this before, John?
Yeah.
Jimmy Hatch was talking about, the SEAL canine guy talking about going to Yale.
Yeah.
It was exactly the same, where he said, man, you have this picture of what this generation is, and then you get thrown into something like you just did, and you go, holy mackerel. There's some really smart people, that aren't on TikTok all day and that take their studies very seriously and take their aviation very seriously. And he said that was a real eye opener. It sounded identical to what you just said.
It's wild.
They're thinking about Jimmy.
I know. I just did my master's last year. I finished my master's, and there's the same type deal. Like, teacher comes to me and she's like, all right, it's all digital. So she's texting the class or we're video, and she's like, all right, guys, want to make sure no one's using AI for papers. And I was like, what is that? How does that work? And they're like, what? You don't know about this? I was like, no, man, I have no idea. It's crazy.
It's 2 letters, A and I.
Yeah. It's like, that sounds cool. How does that work?
Are you challenging me? Are you challenging me to do that?
That is great.
But like everyone in the class is, 24.
She didn't have to worry about you, Andrew, huh?
No, not me. I was like, I had no idea what I was doing. So yeah, it's just staying up late like a sucker.
We talked about the fact that you guys have 429s and all the advanced avionics that are contained within those aircraft. And you look at these young kids. I mean, they've been navigating these different subscreens and electronic menus forever. So for them to get into some of this stuff, I think is not as intimidating as it is for somebody who's maybe spent a majority of their career in an analog, steam gauge aircraft. So it'll be interesting to see them kind of grow into this segment of the industry and how they advance what's already been built. It's kind of exciting for me to look at. So I guess that maybe is a good segue into talking about where you're currently working, and let's profile that agency a little bit.
Palm Beach County. So I'm one of two sergeants, and then we've got 15 line pilots, 4 maintainers, and an administrative secretary who kind of like basically keeps us all in check. And we run 24-hour operations. We service 39 municipalities as well as just the county in general.
Wow.
It's pretty busy. We're centrally located, which is nice. So we're at Palm Beach International. We go down to south of Boca and then north to Jupiter. So like just south of like Stewart's airspace. We work really well with all the counties that surround us. We do mutual aid for some of the western counties, but typically like Martin County and then Broward and Miami-Dade, we all talk really well together. We kind of have like back channels and we'll back each other up. We already have like standardized comm plans, which have, come through over the years, which I'll kind of talk about probably a little later. And then obviously I'd probably say like 80% of what we do is suspect searches. I mean, the typical stuff, right? The way it works is any deputy on the ground cannot call us. So it's got to be a sergeant or above. And then we have so many radio channels that we don't listen to a radio in the hangar. Basically, a sergeant gets on and they say, hey, get the Eagle up or put the Eagle on standby. And then they call the hangar and they say, switch to this channel. This is what they got going on. It's a 1 sentence, like one over the world. And then we just come on the channel and then just start developing the call from there. So if it's a launch, then the guys are going to go launch immediately. And then if it's a standby, it's kind of on them like, hey, do you think this is going to develop? Because if it's going to develop, then just go ahead and launch without the sergeant saying launch. Because it's busy. Like you're running down there, and I had to go back to the road for a year when I made sergeant before I came back to the unit, and that was eye opening. I was like, this is wild because you have somebody's tactical command, somebody's running around trying to do more of like an admin role. Somebody's handling all the other calls for service. They're switching channels. So if we can help them out, if we can say like, hey, this guy's probably either he wants to call us and he hasn't called us yet, or it's probably going to turn into a call, we'll just launch. There's no like limit on flight time for the day. This was a maximum limit. If they hit 5 hours, then you start calling one of our sergeants, one of me or the other sergeant, to determine if we need to get another crew in. Typically, there's no like minimum flight time. It's more like, hey, I need you to go do at least one training flight if it's a slow day, and I need you to do one patrol flight. And then that just develops. Every time we even try and do some sort of training on duty, which the guys have the ability to do, they can go out and do hoist training on duty. They can go do really whatever they want, as long as they coordinate it and they have some sort of plan. They can go do whatever they want to practice. But we also train a lot of instruments. The guys do instrument approaches. They maintain not just currency but proficiency to get back into Palm Beach, and then some of our outline airports. So, and then we also have a rescue component as well as a special mission stuff. So rescue, they're kind of few and far between here. It's not super rural where we can't get people to, but like the Everglades. We had a call last week. A guy was riding his dirt bike and got a severe fracture to his leg, like in 4 different places. And they just like were scared to move him on the sugar sand. He was literally inside of a town. It was like maybe 10 acres of wooded area that he was riding in, but it was like in the town, not far from a hospital or anything, but they just couldn't move him. So they had to hoist him. Mm-hmm. So it was like that kind of stuff. And then we have the program for offshore. We're about an hour with the launch criteria the Coast Guard has from Opelika. So we developed an open water hoist program for blue water with rescue swimmers, and some of those are organic to aviation. Like I'm a rescue swimmer, I'm a rescue specialist, a hoist operator, and a pilot. So it's like, it's kind of, you don't really know what you're going to do that day. You walk in during that 6 a.m. brief, everyone divvies up jobs. Hey, I haven't flown a hoist in a while. I'll be the hoist pilot. And then if we don't get a call, we'll go out and do some training. Okay, cool. I'll be your rescuer today. I'll be your hoist operator, and all that stuff goes on the board. And then the special mission stuff.
Thanks to our sponsor, Airbus. Airbus provides the most efficient helicopter solutions to its customers who serve, protect, and save lives and safely carry passengers in demanding environments. Its civil and military helicopters are flying all over the world, making missions possible. Visit airbus.com for more information.
We've got 4 429s. We keep one in kind of like a comfort configuration for like long transports. We've had to fly operationally all over the state if we need to move people from point A to point B, detectives or whatever we need to do. And that's no fun sitting in a cloth seat in the back. That's not good. So we try and keep at least one like that. We always keep one in a rescue configuration. We try and keep one now with the Huntsman being as prevalent. There's always one in like a surveillance package with a 22-inch monitor in the back. And then that's also our special missions bird. So that's got, typically it's got at least the hoist in for a tactical insertion. And then if we need to, we'll put the ropes in for the fast rope. But those are always kind of on standby anyway. And then the fourth one we'll just use as we need to. We'll augment into either one of those mission sets. If we've got inspections or whatever, maintenance drives the train, obviously.
Man, you guys, your mission set is about as broad as it could possibly get.
Yeah.
Are you guys fighting fire on top of that?
No, so we don't do fire. I'd love to. It's probably the most fun I've ever had in a helicopter. But we don't really have the need for it. The only thing is like when it does happen, it turns into, so it's usually like a lightning strike in the Everglades, and that can get a bit overwhelming quickly because typically nobody will know about it until it's already too big. I don't know if that's ever going to be a mission set for us. I know forestry, our state is in a big change. They're standing up the Florida Guard, which is different than the Florida National Guard. So it's like actual a state entity. I don't know if they're going to have availability to augment forestry with that. So we haven't gotten into that yet. And the 429 it's already pretty heavy. I know they do 429 forest fire fighting in Jamaica, but I haven't reached out to those guys to kind of see what they're running yet.
I think we should volunteer to go down there and look at it. I mean,
yeah. Martin County is they're running a bucket on their A-Star. So I went to their training when they got red carded by the state. It's good. I'm not saying that it's not a necessity, but I think right now we're kind of not really at the point where we need to get into it, but
Right.
I'm sure some catastrophic event will occur and then we'll have to pick that up as well.
Given the broadness of your mission sets, selecting the 429 as the platform used to execute those makes all the sense in the world. The 429 to me is the most beautiful ship that exists. I love the full combination. It's not the biggest ship, it's not the fastest ship, but it's a good combination of all of those things, and it looks amazing. A lot of guys have talked about, or a lot of agencies have talked about the idea of using that as a patrol platform. One, it's a twin engine. You get the speed and performance that goes with that, and people are, I think, a little concerned with the twin engine aspect, that it's much more expensive. And it's interesting talking to Terry Mauchi. It's like it's not as expensive as you'd think, when it comes to comparing it to a single engine operation. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think that a lot of times, like, people look at they'll Google it and they'll look at like the corporate number and what it costs to run a corporate 429, and that's just not realistic. What we do, we've got 4 full-time maintainers. They're doing all the inspections. We would need them anyway, so it's not like, so you can take that kind of, that cost isn't really there. All the pilots are already there, so it's really like the initial training. And then it got to the point where we were orbiting downtown, in a 407, which those GX 407s are unreal. Like, I don't know anyone that doesn't like flying that thing. It's a Ferrari. But we're doing our on station check, and I'm like, hey, I'm making left-hand orbits 1,200 feet. If we lose the engine, I'm going to this drainage pond. Like, I'm not hitting an apartment building with kids in it. So that's it. Like,
yeah,
just so you know, that's what's going to happen. And when you brief that enough, it kind of turns into the point where, like, maybe we should start looking into twin engines.
Yeah.
And that's really what happened. Like, twin engines, we got twin engine aircraft because it was the safer option for where we were working. And then that led us into the special mission stuff, not the other way around. We didn't get it to justify the special missions. We justify the aircraft with the special missions. So, now it kind of works backwards. And I think that a lot of agencies, if they're not already doing this, they're going to have to start getting on board with it, because now with drones coming on, and drones are awesome for a barricaded suspect in a house. Yeah, that's a drone call all day. Go to town.
Mm-hmm.
The moment you think that it can go mobile, you need a helicopter.
Yep.
Okay, well, now I have a twin engine helicopter, and I'm augmenting some of their flight time with drones. Well, what else can I do? What else can I do with this asset that I've just purchased? Oh, I can put SWAT guys on rooftops, which every tactician says is the right thing to do immediately. I mean, Dave Grossman says it in every single, he's like, active shooter, you got to get a guy on a roof. Like, that has to happen. Well, okay. Oh, wait, I have this tool and I can do that. And I can do it quickly. We practice with our SWAT guys, and we did this. They did an active shooter at our courthouse, where the courthouse was obviously the target. They were on the 13th floor or the 12th floor, and we had it like the SWAT guys responded to the hangar to come, and we had to fast rope them onto the roof. From the time that we got the launch call to the time that they took the shot on the person with simunitions in the courtroom was 4 minutes 15 seconds.
Jeez.
Wow.
And then we're not that close. Like, we had to fly downtown, fast rope them in. They made it down the stairs into the courtroom and took the shot without anyone else getting injured. 4 minutes 15 seconds. Like,
Wow.
You can't put a price on that. Like, you need to get it done. Then if that's a possibility that you seriously need to consider, then I mean, how would you not justify utilizing the resource you already have, just applying a special mission set to it? And if you have the time, because you're augmenting some of the flight time with drones and other technology, then might as well get in the game. If it's a resource that you'll be able to utilize effectively later, then that's a huge part of why we do as many mission sets as we do.
Yeah.
We have the resource.
This would be a good time to talk about this. You need support from above to get all that approved, correct?
Absolutely.
You obviously have that. Talk about that, about how important it is to have someone above the sergeant level or even the captain level supporting you to do those missions like you just described. Because there's people in high places that don't like that stuff.
Yeah.
And they say, oh, no, we don't want you to do that. You just do this, Talk about that, Andrew.
I've been told that. I've been told like, hey, we're not doing this. This is way too high liability. This is like way too out there. And that's that's the double-edged sword, right? Because a lot of guys get out there and you got to make sure you don't run with scissors. You need a standardized product. You need some sort of training plan that doesn't always incorporate your own guys. Like all of our hoist training is done. We utilize ARS for all of our hoist training. It's not an inbred program. We didn't just come up with it on a whim and just like throw it together. Our initial fast rope training was done with another company. Now, just because of what I do in the Air Force, we had the ability to augment with, PJs and other people. So, I'm able to pull from that training so we don't have to necessarily pay for it as much. And we're getting top of line stuff. But, our aerial platform operations training, that was all done. Our initial training was all brought in by a contractor. And, once you have that and then you start training it and you're not just qualified and current, but you're proficient in it, then you got to show them. You got to come up with a plan and then bring it to them and say, hey, this is viable. I want you to see it. I want you to understand wholeheartedly the amount of liability you're about to sign off on, because you are. And then we're going to go from here. And if this is a program that you want to develop, this is my step forward. These are how I'm going to maintain currencies. You have to come to them with a full solution. And if you come to any supervisor with a problem, you're already well behind. You're hanging out on the state. You got to come to them with a solution, and you got to come to them with a full solution, and then be ready for questions. And when they say like, well, we don't really need this, but like, why do you think we need this? You better be able to answer that question. Like, oh, how do you see this progressing? You better be able to answer that question. And it's not something you should just jump into head first. It needs to be well thought out. You need to bring in, the experts. Ask. I can't even tell you how many times I've sent products to other agencies. If you guys need anything, just reach out. I will give it to you, and I'll try and help out as much as I can. All of the other agencies around us, they all know that. I send SOPs out to everybody, and I think that's a huge part too. I think that's starting to get a little prevalent in the industry, especially with like going to AppsCon and you're meeting people. And I think 90% of the people out there are really willing to help.
Yeah, absolutely.
We talk about that a lot. This industry is great about that.
Yeah, it really is. I'm more and more impressed every year with just the way that, relationships are developing. There's not a lot of competition anymore. It's really more camaraderie. And that's like night and day compared to, I'm sure 20 years ago.
You talked about product, and a lot of the folks we talk about how do you keep getting approvals to go to this next level? They keep going back to doing what they're doing well now. You guys have obviously done that. You're doing all these little things so well that you're unlocking the next thing. So when you look at all the mission sets you guys have now, and you as a supervisor, you're privy to all the missions that have been completed. When you look back in the last year or two, is there one mission that kind of encompasses all these different mission sets and training that had a positive outcome that stands out as being like, we put all this work and effort into developing these programs, and this is what we have to show for it. Like, this is a really cool incident that highlights our abilities.
Thank you to our sponsor, SpectroLab. SpectroLab, a pioneer and world-leading supplier of high-intensity searchlights for all para-public operations. Visit www.spectrolab.com to learn more about our third generation Night Sun series, high intensity searchlight. When reliability and performance is critical to your mission, count on Spectrolab Night Sun searchlights.
It didn't really end well, but we had a case. It was a mishap at an airfield, and we ended up hoisting in a rescue swimmer into a location that you wouldn't even really think you needed one. And it was more like a lake, but it was a small lake, but just nobody could get to it. And then, all of fire rescue, all of our chain of command was all right there. And we were hoisting, helocasting, and doing all this stuff within 50 yards of them. So they're not watching it on downlink, but like they're watching it. Seeing how the crews were able to, I would say, like, dynamically game plan, because they're just, every time you would turn the corner. So I was flying, one of the other hoist operators, he was a phenomenal hoist operator. And then the rescue swimmer was also organic to aviation. So like all of us know each other very well. And as those roadblocks, like every time we would try something new, we hit a roadblock, and, being able to dynamically game plan and like keep flexing and massaging and working the problem until we get a good solution. That was, I would say, pretty eye opening. I think the whole chain of command at that point, because, like rope patrol captains are there, and, high up people who usually wouldn't even see this stuff or be privy to, or maybe read about it, on the next day when they read the report. But now they're seeing it live right in front of their face, not on a screen. And I think that was very helpful. I think that the same like fast rope exercise that we showed, now you get like data points. You're able to actually give them real data points, and you're like, wow, once you put a numerical value to it, that's also very helpful. But yeah, I think, I don't think there's one culminating event that took place for everything that we do. There's definitely some, we've had like scares of active shooters, and then we ended up, picking up a SWAT sniper and putting him in the back of the bird, and doing that well. I had a chase, multi-agency chase that went up to Martin County, and the guy was shooting at deputies out of the car type deal, and then ended up head on collided into a parked deputy's car doing probably like 65. And then Martin County was actually over top. They picked up the surveillance role, and I just got on the radio, me and the other pilot, and I was like, hey man, ask them if they need us to land and take that guy to a hospital. Because I knew where we were. There was nobody there. And the watch commander lieutenant gets on. He's like, yes, right now. And we're like, wow. Oh, okay. So it's like, wow, that got live real fast. And, we did that, and we got him to the hospital. And, luckily it was a mission set that I was intimately familiar with. But, it's that kind of stuff. It's just having the opportunity, thinking about what you can do with the assets you have and using it to its maximum extent. And I think, not being wrapped up in, your typical, hey, I'm going to go out and do surveillance, but also planning for it. And understanding like, hey, this is risky. When we do a frat for the day, when we do our actual risk assessment tool, we plan for like worst case scenario. Like, okay, what if I have to do a hoist out in the middle of the ocean? How is that going to work out? What kind of numbers are we looking at? Put a numerical value to it, and then understand how you're going to manage it, because you don't actually mitigate risk, right? You can only really manage it. And once you determine like how I'm going to manage it, like put that into play, make sure everyone's on the same page. Because I can't tell you how many times we got into calls, and then like you're halfway through it, and then the one guy is like, hey guys, just we going to run the checklist? And then you're like, ooh, yeah, let's do that. Let's take a beat. Let's run the checklist. Appreciate you. I'm going to get back to you in a minute. And, like making sure that everyone's on the same plan, so nobody gets there. And then, you're playing catch up. You're in the debrief, and you're like, oh man, we didn't do any of that. Yeah. And then doing like a real debrief. I tell guys all the time, I was like, if you come in here and you high five, just it's not worth it. You're wasting everyone's time. I don't want to hear how well we did. I only want to hear how to improve. If you did something that is awesome, great. Talk about it later. You share it with your wife. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Today is only about how we're going to get better.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah, if you go into and we debrief everything. If we had a hoist call, we do a full debrief right after, and then we do a massive, everyone's invited to debrief as soon as I can possibly schedule it. If it's not the next day, then it's going to be the day after. And people are allowed to come in on overtime, but that's the only way to make sure that everything gets done the way that it should. And then everyone's on the same page. If something comes out of it and you end up adjusting one of your standard operating procedures out of it, then everyone was there when that decision was made. And there isn't going to be somebody lost in the sauce next time they go out.
A couple things that I really think our listeners really need to hear again here is that you talked about, you have the asset, it can do these things, we should do it and do it right. Everything that you talked about there, inserting a guy on a rooftop. If you're in a unit that has a rotorcraft and you have not trained for that, get ready, because someday somebody is going to say, hey, we just had this happen. We need a SWAT guy on that rooftop. Hey, we have a helicopter, and they're going to be asked to do it. And they've never trained for it. They've never thought about all the things that you've been talking about, Andrew. And they might do it, and they might do it and have success, but they might do it and it could be a catastrophe. Absolutely. I love the way you're talking about this, that you're thinking ahead with what can this do? Because eventually somebody else, maybe not in the unit, is going to say, hey, can you do this? As simple as a canine transportation. I've talked about that for years. Canine transportation. If you haven't been asked to do it, you're going to be asked to do it. And when you do, have you trained for that? Have you thought about it? Have you thought about the things that can go badly? Because if you haven't, and you haven't trained for it, you don't have a written policy, you are rolling the dice. And in some smaller units, you have an accident, that unit might be done. Not just that you lost an airframe, or maybe you lost a person, but the unit might be done. So you got to think about it the way you're thinking about it, the way your unit's thinking about it. And secondly, I hope everybody takes to heart what you just said at the end about how serious you are about debriefing. Guys coming in on overtime to debrief, God bless America. That's the way it should be. And, I can speak a long time on this. John's heard me go down this rant before. I won't go into it again, but I'll just tell you that my department's not good at debriefing, that I worked for 31 years. There are teams within the department that are great on debriefing, but I loved what you just said just now, Andrew. And I hope everybody really pays attention to that and knows that, if you debrief everything you do, and I love the high five part. That was my favorite part. No time to high five. It's time to talk about what we can do better, because there is no perfect incident. I've never been at one. Andrew's never been at one. John's never been at one. And the fact is, you never will be, ever. There's always something. It might be a little thing, but there's always something that we can get better at. And if you're too busy high-fiving and saying, that went great, man. Well, yeah, it did overall, but we forgot to do this. I loved what you just said there, Andrew. It's gold. And I just wanted to reemphasize that everybody should rewind right now and listen to what Andrew just said in his last 5 minutes, because that will keep you from getting in trouble, keep you from getting killed, keep you from hurting other people in your department and people, the citizens on the ground, if you follow the philosophy that you just described. Bravo, Andrew. I loved everything I heard there.
Well, I appreciate it.
Part of what Jack's talking about comes down to training. Can we do a mission? Maybe. Are we trained to do it? Probably not. Should we do it? No. But but I think a lot of times we find ourselves, like Jack said, we're being asked to do something, and then you're sitting there wondering, well, should I do it? Well, you've developed a company, and I'd like to talk about the training that you guys offer, because I think it is important as an agency to look outside of your own personnel to provide some expertise and just a different look on the things you're doing. You may have an agency that's been doing hoist operations for 30 years. Doesn't mean they've been doing it correctly for 30 years. So bringing a company like SR3 in to look at the overall process you're using is really wise, in my opinion. Not just for performance, but for safety. Making sure that things are being done in a way that's maybe the safest to today's standards, because maybe that standard was 10 years ago or 15 years ago. But how do we use the technology we have today to do the job the best? And so again, your company deals with some of this. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, so helotech, helicopter elite level operational tactics, that came out of necessity. Like, I was sending people SOPs, I was sending people, products on how to really make their program the best they can be, and at least give them some tools to go off of. But I wasn't given any training that went along with it. So it's basically kind of like getting a math book and then going through it and then just trying to teach yourself math. It's not really the optimized way to do it. And the idea is, there's a lot of good companies out there. Like, we use ARS. If you got a question about hoist, you call Bob Cockle. Like, that's what you do. Like, the guy's, he knows it all. He's the best, in my opinion. And, there's other companies out there too. I haven't worked with any of them, so Bob Cockle's also the best because he's the only guy I worked with it. But the military too, good. Like the like you said, like the military, like we've been doing hoist forever. We're not necessarily really good at it. We just do it a lot. And now they're starting to get into dynamic hoisting. They're starting to get into, getting away from some of the archaic rescue devices that they've been using for the last 50 years. There's better stuff out there, and you just need somebody to say like, hey, maybe we get away from that. And, helotech really is more of, in my opinion, it gives something that maybe is a little different. Now, those guys can teach you how to hoist, and they can teach you how to maybe even fast rope, and they can teach you how to do a lot of stuff well. But the only thing that's a little different is what I've experienced is how to get there. Like, there's a game plan process that you need to be able to work. There's a game plan process when you get to, you're not just going to get there, turn in, start infilling guys, and then pick them right back up. There's a lot of things that happen in that process, including tactical mission planning. Like Jack was saying, if you got a helicopter, you got to get a guy on a rooftop, that's a tactical insertion. Well, now I got to get him off. That's a tactical extraction. Nobody's really teaching that. And then tactical mission planning, if you're trying to hit a house, a SWAT's hitting a house out in a rural area, and there is a mile-long driveway, that's one route. You better believe they're going to say like, hey, can you at least put a sniper team in the backyard so that when the SWAT hits the house, there's somebody there? Well, yeah, I can probably do that. You're going to say, yeah, that's landing, right? That's easy. It's not easy. You're coordinating time, distance with a SWAT element who can easily get a flat tire, or you need to have a whole plan in place. And that's kind of where helotech comes in. It's more of we're using the current tactics that the military is using, current tactics that law enforcement's using, because me and the other two instructors that I coordinate with, we're all still active. We're all still in the game. We're getting the most highest level of training that you can possibly have. And now we're applying it into the law enforcement and public safety sector. And that's kind of how the whole thing started. We were basically giving out products without any content or context, I should say. Doing infill and extraction, that is something that a lot of people kind of take for granted. I've watched so many videos on Instagram and YouTube, and I see these guys and they're like, oh yeah, we're going to land right here and we're going to infill. I'm like, oh man, that's not good. Like, you don't want to do that. And, you see that enough and you're like, man, I just felt like I really needed to impress upon the industry as much good knowledge as I could. And, we're not in it to become a millionaire and own my own G5. That's not why I do it. I'm really all about just trying to push along the information that I can. And if I can give somebody else a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of insight, utilize their program to the highest level that they can, then, everyone's better for it. They're going to grow up in their program's going to grow. They're going to have good succession planning. They're going to have everything, all the tools that they need to keep that program up. And that's really what it came down to, operating at an elite level. Everyone wants to say they do cool guy stuff until it's time to do cool guy stuff. And then you really need to, you buckle down and you have to be professional with it. It's not a cowboy game. So that's, that was kind of that was the whole mindset behind it. Realistically coming up with a company where I could incorporate all those things, especially like tactical mission planning side, even surveillance procedures and like how guys go through and their techniques. It's critical, working with the FAA, getting a lights out waiver, getting an ADSB out waiver. Like those you have to have those. There is so much counter intel these days where you're just spinning your wheels. If you think you're going to go out and get some sort of, crime ring who's out there doing stuff, you better believe they have counter intel. And that's easy. That's an app. And if you're not running some way around that, you're already hanging out well behind the aircraft.
Yeah.
If you don't have a plan to do a light skid landing on a rooftop to get a SWAT operator on top, you need to. It's gonna happen. They're gonna ask you.
Somebody's gonna ask.
Somebody's gonna ask.
Yeah.
Just like Jack said, somebody's gonna ask. That's what happened to me. I was working in Morgan County and 2 guys showed up and they were like, "Hey, I need you to infill me in this airfield out west because we think that they're smugglers." And I was like, "Okay, can I have a little more intel?" And they're like, "No, and we need to be as covert as possible." I was like, "Oh, okay." So that's interesting. And luckily I had military training to fall back on at the time, but
yes,
you come to a normal agency that may not have that. You got to have some sort of plan. Otherwise, it's overtly dangerous. You don't need to do that. And we have all of the tools available to us. So this isn't, I'm not flying in Iraq, I'm flying here. I can go out and run my route as much as I want at 1,500 feet with my MX-15, and I can see everything. I can see every little thing along that route, every hazard, every whatever, Widowmaker, building, wire, doesn't matter. I have that availability. And then I can come back and then I can fly the whole thing at the altitude that I choose so I can terrain mask and then pop into the target and pop out with the highest likelihood of success. And, that's something that we just don't think about. We're just like, yeah, I'm going to go run this route. I know it.
Thank you to our sponsor, Metro Aviation. Metro Aviation, the world's largest family-owned air medical operator, offers comprehensive aircraft services with 140-plus aircraft in over 25 states. The Completions Center installs medical and law enforcement kits and avionics, serving diverse aviation needs, including offshore, utility, VIP, and corporate sectors.
These requests, 99.9% of the time, these requests are coming from non-aviators.
Oh, absolutely.
They're coming from operators, they're coming from chiefs, they're coming from, all sorts of different entities within the law enforcement department. They have no idea. They don't understand weight and balance. They don't understand the FARs. They don't understand noise. They don't understand anything about that aircraft, but they're saying they want you to do this. Come on, I know a helicopter do this. I saw it on YouTube. Just pick those guys up and put them on the roof. Well, hold on a minute. I've never done that before. Well, today's your day. That's the attitude many times. And again, I just love the mindset that you're talking about here and just saying, well, we have the asset. We can get it done, but on a whim to do it is high risk.
Yeah,
it's high risk. Let's face it. It's moderate to high risk when you train and do some of these things. Now you want to ask somebody to do something they've never done. That is extremely high risk. The risk versus benefit is off the charts against that. But this conversation is so important because we know from experience, all of us know that agencies will ask the aviation assets to do all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And if you're not prepared, that's not good.
That's a huge, for helitac, when we do training, it isn't just the flight crew. It isn't just the SWAT guys. It's everybody. You are an active crew member when you hit that deck. At PBSO, all of our rope masters, with the exception of the organic ones we have in aviation, they're all of our SWAT guys. So the rope master is the SWAT guy, typically the SWAT sniper. They do the infill, they retrieve the rope, and then immediately move to the door to do aerial platform operations. And you're just like, yeah. And that took years for us to like really fine tune, and being able to apply that now is really, I mean, it's remarkable to see kind of the progression and how people have to get vested in things, and it's a slow, crawl, walk, run type deal. But once you get there, it's super efficient now. The guys get in and they just start moving, and they're active crew members. They know what they're looking for. They're clearing airspace. They're clearing the tail. They're doing amazing work. For us to be able to do that, it took a while. It takes good training. It takes aircraft availability for SWAT operators, but it also, you have to include them in the fold. Like we get out there and we make sure that our relationships are really good with special operations, with all of our tactical squads, our intel squads. Those are all really good relationships, and agencies really need to build those relationships. You live on an island. You're at a hangar all day. People only talk to you when they really need you. And then usually it's frustrating because they don't really have any hand in what you're doing. And they're kind of basing all information on the intel you give them. So that's a tough spot. It's hard to build good working relationships with people like that. So, get out there, invite them over, call them, ask them exactly what they're looking for, that kind of stuff. Like you just have to build those relationships.
The island, John, the island, here are different coasts, and we have the same term.
Yeah.
You're on an island, you're isolated, you're away from the everyday, precincts or station houses or whatever you call them, but air support's on an island, and it's dangerous. You get out of touch sometimes.
Yeah.
Both ways. We
Absolutely.
get out of touch with them. They get out of touch with us. It's a two-way street there. I love that you said island.
Yeah. Yeah. Something that comes to mind through this whole course conversation has been airborne use of force. So when my agency developed our airborne use of force program, it took about a year and a half of planning and training to where we could confidently stand the program up and say we are now capable of executing this mission. And I think from a command staff's perspective, they see it relatively simplistically, and they say, you're just going to put a guy in an aircraft and you're going to shoot at somebody. Well, man, there's so many considerations to put in place there.
An infinite amount.
Had it not been for the kind of the crawl, walk, run phase that you're describing, it could have been catastrophic if we had tried to deploy that in real life.
Yeah.
So
ignorance is bliss, man. It is. There's nothing to that. Our SWAT guys are good shooters. You guys are good pilots. Go do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. There's a million things to think about.
And then the way that, like the way that you fly too, like the weapons patterns that you would fly, they're completely aircraft dependent. So like what you can do in one agency just doesn't make sense in certain airframes, and being able to apply those effectively, it's not an easy game. That's for sure. It's nerve wracking for sure.
It's hard to tell a fellow cop, and it rarely happens where I say it out loud, but you look and they say, "Oh yeah, we're gonna start shooting out of the aircraft." Oh really? Well, what's your fleet? What airframe you flying?
Mm-hmm.
And you just go, "Are you insane?" You want to say, "Are you insane?" They just don't know.
Yeah.
They just don't know, and then hopefully you get a relationship where you can tell them, "You need to rethink that. You need to rethink that. That airframe is great for this and this, but not for this and this." Heck, just in the past week, I've had conversations about this where I heard about an agency that's using a certain airframe, and they're getting advice on using it for things that it's not very smart, and it's going to lead to a catastrophe. And you just go, God, somebody needs to tell them. It's not the perfect asset. It can't. Depending on what airframe, it can't do everything. There's always a limitation.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Andrew, for our listeners, can you run down a list of the kinds of training that you offer at Helitech?
Yeah. So the primary is tactical insertion extraction, fast rope, rappel. Helocasting is also included in that, and then hoist.
Can you explain that a little bit? What is helocasting?
Helocasting, it's departing the aircraft over the water. So
Okay.
typically, there's a few different types of ways, but 10 and 10 is kind of the typical way to do it. 10 knots, 10 feet AGL. And then you have to take into consideration like wave heights and stuff. For us in Florida, it's really not that big of a deal. Maybe 4-foot variations, but I was helocasting some PJs and SEER specialists out in San Diego last year, and that was like 15 feet variations. Dropping and hitting from 25 feet hurts. It's not fun. I can tell you that from experience. You get water in places you didn't want water. So it's So doing that right is super important. And then so radiological detection is also something that we do. So just running the actual routes back and forth can be really difficult. I've worked with DOE in the past, and it's something that they do phenomenally. But in the event that your agency does get into that, we offer that. And then consulting, just being able to come through, look at your standardized products, help out with the development of your program if you're starting a new program, or if you have a direction that you want to go, whether that's internal to actually picking people, whether you're trying to just grow the unit, pick new airframes, or expand it into different mission sets, how to really do that effectively. And the same thing, like pitch it. You have to be able to talk to people. You have to be able to talk to your chain of command, understand what they need, where they want to go, and kind of come up with a collaborative effort. So those are kind of the big ones.
I wish we had the time to pick your brain on selection, because that's a big topic of conversation for us. And I think every agency kind of struggles on, how do I make my process better?
Yeah, it's tough. And you really obviously everyone knows Clay Lacey, but you listen to him talk about it, and you're like, that's the way to do it. And then I go back home and I'm like, wait, I can't do that right there. I have to adjust this. And then I don't want to send him 50 emails going back and forth, but it's definitely, unit specific. You go through and you look at what you have available to you, and then how you can kind of manage the people who want to do it. And, it's not for everybody. And I think that's a hard thing to get past. It's not for everybody. Just like being a canine handler isn't for everybody. Not everybody gets to go to aviation and just do great things. There could be physiological effects. It's a mental game. You're working in a dynamic airspace, flying through the air, while managing a call. You have to be able to compartmentalize that stuff and work it out. And, unfortunately we see that. And I think a lot of times people are like, well, I want to give them another shot. It's a good place. It's a great unit. But at the same time, you can't. You need to kind of cut your losses. You're not flying a Cessna from point A to point B. So, and that's tough. That's a hard conversation. Had to have it. It's rough. I don't feel good about it after, but ultimately I want to be able to go home and sleep, and actually sleep, and not be worried about the air crew.
And you want that candidate to be successful their job, whatever that job is. So
yeah,
while this person may not be successful here, they're going to be successful somewhere else. The police department, law enforcement has a lot of different things you can do. So you're really doing that person a service by cutting the cord instead of stringing them along and being like, well, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely.
So go find something that you're really good at, because you've proven, in my experience, if you're going to aviation, you're a candidate for aviation. You're a hard charger. You've proven over the course of your career that you can do hard things. That's why you're here. So I know that you can go out and do some really cool stuff elsewhere. So it's tough, but it's necessary, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I think that, I mean, like you said, if they're already coming to us, they're probably really good cops. They're probably really good, and they have a strong work ethic. They're astute. They can come up with, a million different reasons to keep them. But really, at the end of the day, it's like, hey, are you going to be able to operate at the level that I need you to operate at? And if you know that that's not there, then yeah, we have 68 different jobs. I think it's actually more than that, but you have 68 different jobs you can do as a deputy for our agency.
Wow.
And it takes 4 years to become a PIC if you come in with nothing. go do something else in your career. Like, this is finite, man. This is a low time game. It's fine. You're going to be at home retired one day and you're not even going to remember this. This is going to be a blimp in your backyard or your rearview mirror. Like, just go do something that you want to do that you can be successful at. This isn't, it's a calling for some, and some it's a stopover point, but it takes a lot of dedication. And if you don't have it, then it's not really that big of a deal,
Yeah. For folks who are interested in getting in touch with you to talk about some of the training you offer, where could they find information on how to contact you?
So they can go to helotacair.com or contact@helotacair.com. That's my email. And really just kind of pick around the site, see if there's something that you think that maybe you need to brush up on, or if there's some sort of new product or a new program that you want to develop. Just reach out. Like I said, we're not, I still have 2 other jobs. So, this isn't a full-time puppy mill. I'm not trying to pump out a bunch of training to a bunch of different people. I like to be specific with the units that I train with. So, reach out. Let's have a conversation, and it may turn into something that I can just give you a pointer, and, it's not that big of a deal, and we can work through it. Or, hey, I'll come out. I'll bring, an ex-PJ or somebody with me, and we're going to get your program to a level that is going to be a really kind of elite program that a lot of people won't be able to do. So,
yeah, love it. Man, this conversation's been awesome. We skipped over a ton of stuff too. Didn't get to talk about half of what I wanted to discuss.
All right, I'll come back.
We're going. Well, I heard John say very recently we're going to go into the 5-hour format.
Oh, like the Sean Ryan show. Perfect.
Exactly.
I need a leather chair though.
I know we need leather chairs, but you know what? On the Hangar Z, there's no pee breaks. Sean Ryan takes pee breaks, just for the record, and he's a SEAL.
It's true.
We're tough here at the Hangar Z. No pee breaks.
That's right. Well, man, it's again been an honor to talk to you. Before I close out, Jack, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I do. I've been so impressed with everything we talked about, and I just want to thank you for being here, Andrew. And you're amazing. And your unit, your influence on that unit, Helotac, I'm really impressed with that. And now Palm Beach County is on our radar to come visit because I want to see it. Very impressed with what you're doing there. And I think the mindset really brings it all together. It really is. I mean, you can have the best equipment in the world. You can have 100 helicopters. You got to have the right mindset. You and your unit have the right mindset. And I love that. So I hope that's what our listeners take away today, that mindset's important. The culture is important. You're taking into account safety but still getting the job done. And I loved it. I really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks again, Andrew.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I really appreciate that. That was really nice of you to say. And, I think at the end of the day, we're all just trying to leave the world a little better than we found it. And, that's really kind of what I'm trying to do here. And luckily, I've been blessed to have a good agency and good kind of platform to be able to work that. So in the spirit of the chili cook-off that you guys have, we do a hurricane prep and planning meeting in May. You guys are more than welcome. It's a lot of fun. A lot of agencies fly in for it. It gets bigger and bigger every year. But yeah, you guys should come down for that. That's a lot of fun. We kind of plan out hurricane response for the region for the year. So
I would love that. That'd be really cool. We got to find a way to get there. So
yeah,
we got to have a drink of the day. We didn't have drink of the day today, so we got to drink of the day in person. And we got to see the impressive operation you talked about. Yeah. So
well, we know a guy, John. We know a guy that we could talk to at Vertical. So
yeah.
This is great.
Until next time, Andrew. Again, thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you later.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys.
All right.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Hangar Z podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe to hear more stories that promote the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation. Lastly, stand by for a message after a word from our sponsors. Cheers.
Thanks to our sponsor, Airbus. Airbus provides the most efficient helicopter solutions to its customers who serve, protect, and save lives and safely carry passengers in demanding environments. Its civil and military helicopters are flying all over the world, making missions possible. Visit airbus.com for more information. Thank you to our sponsor, Metro Aviation. Metro Aviation, the world's largest family-owned air medical operator, offers comprehensive aircraft services with 140-plus aircraft in over 25 states. The Completions Center installs medical and law enforcement kits and avionics, serving diverse aviation needs, including offshore, utility, VIP, and corporate sectors. Thank you to our sponsor, SpectroLab. SpectroLab, a pioneer and world-leading supplier of high-intensity searchlights for all para-public operations. Visit www.spectrolab.com to learn more about our third-generation Night Sun series high-intensity searchlight. When reliability and performance is critical to your mission, count on SpectroLab Night Sun searchlights.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Hangar Z podcast. We hope you enjoyed the dynamic conversation with Andrew Nicoletti, where we explored his unique journey as a sergeant and pilot with the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. From the intricacies of the Huntsman mission to the vital importance of leadership and training in law enforcement aviation, Andrew shared invaluable insights that are both enlightening and inspiring. As we wrap up, remember the significance of mentorship, relationship building, and thorough planning in high-stakes environments. Principles that apply not just in aviation and law enforcement, but in all aspects of leadership. We encourage you to reflect on these lessons and consider how you can implement them in your own career. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your support helps us continue to bring you insightful discussions and expert guests. Cheers.
Time to close up the hangar. Thanks for joining us on the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts.